Good morning, everybody. Hope my volume's up today. The volume in my hair is up today. I don't know what is going on. Good to see you all on a Tuesday, not one of my usual days, but today is a day for us. Oh, Linda, I love the little tomato and the strawberry and the grapes. Thumbs up from the Garden State. Thank you. Robin, great to see you. I love that picture you posted on Facebook this morning that said it's not a party until the Wisconsin girl shows up. I thought that was very cute. Kirsten, great to see you. Happy Tuesday. Mom, happy Tuesday. Hope I posted this in our group. I know Tuesday's not our day, so there's not a lot of friends looking for us. Heidi, great to see you. I just sent your yarns out with an extra skein that is just for you. What did I call it? Forest Floor, I think I called it. It is a one-of-a-kind skein just for you. So you'll see my message when you get that. Well, good to see you this morning. I'm going to keep an eye on the thread. I just kicked our table. Whew, busy morning already. There's so many things going on. Volume's fine. Thank you, Mom. I was just in the middle of recording a video on the Amish toothbrush rug and having massive phone difficulties. Like I record with my phone when I do those kinds of videos for YouTube, you know. It's such a fun technique, but I'm really struggling with technology. I'm also struggling with the girls next door who are exercising, and it is like concert decibel level. So unfortunately, I had to go over there. Knock, knock, knock. Hello, and as soon as I closed the door that they were talking about me. What can you do? It's like absurd. It's like criminal level of noise while I'm trying to work immediately on the other side of the wall. What can one do other than speak up? Karen, great to see you. Cold and cloudy in Colorado. Did you end up getting that second bout of snow? Oh, dear. Barbara, great to see you. Lisa, great to see you. Lisa, I had a dream last night that the thing that is happening in Pennsylvania, I think, what was it, August, September? The fairy tale rug thing, that's still on, right? I had a dream that got canceled, but what got canceled was like the textile event in the spring, right? But the thing that's coming up in Pennsylvania later in the year, that's still on. I just want to confirm because I want to come and I want it to be on my calendar. I'm having a bit of a struggle this morning. I'm trying to make a decision about whether to go to solder with the brand because I was asked to go, and it just seems like I would love to go, but it's so much work, isn't it, being there at my table and everything? I wonder how many of my buddies are going. Let me know if you're going. That will help me make up my mind. I just turned 50. It's not like I'm an ancient crone just yet. But I feel like an ancient crone, and schlepping is something that I just shy away from lately. But it is a great opportunity to go to the most important rug hooking event. It's later on in August 20 to 20-something. Thinking about that. So that's come across the table, and I'm thinking about that. You know what else has come across the table? I just returned a book contract for another book, and this will be Rug Hooking Magazine Publishing. A book on the Design Like series that we do together, where I say, let's design like for this month Chagall. And we talk about the things that Chagall does over and over with the goat and the chicken and the moon and the bride and all of his symbols. And what does it mean? And why are they sometimes upside down? And why is so much of it blue? We do that for so many artists in so many months. Rug Hooking is going to be publishing a book that I write on many different artists, including Van Gogh and Chagall and Matisse and some of the Maud Lewis, some of the ones that we've done already, certainly Magdalena, but some new artists that we haven't talked about that will be especially for that book, some really wonderful, unknown, older artists from the early 20th century with lots of original patterns and walking you through the design-like process, looking with the eyes of sort of more of an art historian than a maker to say, well, this is what they do again and again. Isn't that funny that they repeat this? This is why their stuff works, right? This is what I associate with this particular artist. So that will be a super fun book for me to do. And I'm going to put lots of shout outs in our Facebook group, which is Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club, to say, do you have examples of rugs that you did after we ran that class together in the past? Because of course I'd want to use those rugs in the chapters, things that you've made or designs that you've made as a result of taking the class and working on projects together that have to do with the Design Like series. Good morning, Cindy. Great to see you. So there's a lot going on here. We did get more snow, but you'll be at solder, Karen. Okay, well, that's good. Lisa said in response to the PA thing, I think I'm going to get the pass for all 3 days to attend. Oh, you mean solder. Okay, excellent. And yes, it's still on. Good. See, these dreams I have at 3:15 are not good. They're never normal, and they always leave me with this feeling of something ominous, something heavy, big, and dark, or tripping me up with things that are on the calendar like that. So I've got to put that. Lisa, do you happen to know the dates for that off the top of your head? Because I want to be sure it doesn't conflict with solder before I say yes to that. Linda, hello in Massachusetts. April, good morning. Carol, good morning. Oh dear. All right. I'm just catching up on our chat. So let's keep going in that chat with these side conversations we're having. I'm excited about all of these things, and I want to talk to you about all of these things. And hey, do you know of an artist that I should be thinking about for this Design Like book? I have a bunch that I've never mentioned before because I'm kind of saving them, and you're going to love them. They all happen to be women. Not that that's a requirement by any means, but do you have an artist that you think would really suit this series that I could really dig into and say design like so-and-so, or a thing like we did designing like the Tavern Painter or the Great American Quilt, right? There will be some chapters that are more of like a concept. MCM, Mid-Century Modern, right? We did a class on that. I'll probably make that into a chapter. Have a lot of the content already. That's the thing. And this book will be out next fall. So that'll be, I submitted in the spring or earlier. I think I'll be probably done earlier. This one is a breeze because it's not a technical book, which is a nice change for me. So do you have an artist that you feel like that about? And I'm trying to shy away from artists, and of course my sister is the best springboard for this conversation, but because she works at Yale and she works in art, and she's like, she's way up there. I want to steer away from artists who there are huge issues with their estate, their legacy, copyright stuff. Because even though it's design like, I don't even want to try to play with getting Cans of Soup by Warhol. I would love to be able to show something like that, but it's just not worth the struggle and the expense of licensing all of those individuals. So I'm looking for ideas for great artists who jump out of the woodwork, whether they be contemporary or older artists, artists who are gone. I'm just trying to avoid complicated legacy situations. Because I do want this to be a breeze, and I don't need any more tripping up with technical stuff and emails and all that stuff. But let me know if you have any great thoughts. Georgia O'Keeffe is a great one. And April, it's funny that you say that because Kirsten's on. And Kirsten, was it your grandmother or your grandfather? I think it was your grandmother who painted in this, very much in the style of Georgia O'Keeffe. And we have talked several times, Kirsten and I, about doing some of your grandmother's, I'm going to feel bad if it's your granddad, their rugs, his or her rugs, to make them large and to use them in a design like O'Keeffe class. And that would be a great one to do, and I think that I will do it. I'll check on all the copyright stuff for her. That should be fine, but I think that's a great idea because exploring things as an extreme close-up was certainly a moment of time in art history, wasn't it? And it's certainly something that works well for us as rug hookers because you do see at Home Goods these massive contemporary machine-made rugs that are extreme blow-ups of flowers. And what is the first thing that you think? It is always like Georgia O'Keeffe, of course, right? And that's what they were thinking when they drew it. So that's a great one. I love that. A great inspiration piece. Tapestry art. That's a great idea. Rebecca Mezoff. I don't know that name. I'm going to have to look up that name. Can somebody send that to me in Facebook message? Because when I close, I can't see the things anymore. That's a good one. I'm going to have to search that up. And Cindy, is that tapestry art kind of like in the style of like the unicorn, like Renaissance tapestry, or more contemporary? Because I definitely do want to have a chapter that's devoted to sort of that heavy Renaissance feel, right? Like the mythical sort of bestiary stuff, a castle in the background. I do want something, I want to represent that moment in art history for sure. And I also want, I don't know if it would be the same chapter, but I also want to represent like the work of monks and illuminations, right? The beautiful florid flowing text and flowers and very organic shapes mixed with text. I'd like to try to figure out how to work that into, it can't be everything, and it might be a series of books, but tapestry is one that I definitely want to cross over to because it's also a crossover of mediums, right? And I love doing textile mashups because I think they're so much more meaningful. They don't just double in interest, they multiply in interest. So that is a great one, and I will certainly do that. Hey, Crystal, good to see you. You're fine. You're fine. Great to see you. I'm just catching up on your Mondrian. Yeah, Mondrian is great. I have been looking at him. and some other artists of his period that did very graphic stuff. I'm going to have to check his estate because he's such a I think he's a Dutch artist. That'll be easy, right? I'll have to check all that and see. That's another one that is very, very good. A big name, a heavy hitter. I'll have to see how many very graphic artists I have on the list so far, as opposed to, I don't want too many impressionists, too many modernists. I do have a couple of sort of pop art, op art people that I really like that will work really well. But yeah, I'm looking for some real surprises. So I'm anxious to look up Grandmother Viola Meyer. Okay, so it was your grandmother. I was going to say, who's that? That's Kirsten's grandmother, who worked in the style of, with sort of exaggerated, enlarged flower motifs, very much in the style of O'Keeffe. And around the same time, I would expect tapestry art, Grandmother Viola. That is Viola Meyer. That is a great name. Viola Meyer. See, I had to say it 3 times. It's like superstitious stuff working in me. Viola Meyer 4 times. Okay. See, now it might turn into a thing. Cindy says she's contemporary. She's an artist in Colorado, New Mexico. Interesting. Oh, interesting. All right. Well, you know, contemporary is great too, because then there's the chance of getting in touch with the person and saying, you know, is this a thing? Could this be a thing? This is a great way to, you know, cross-advertise someone else's work. It works in a completely different style. Mondrian is Dutch, Heidi, isn't he? Heidi, what about Belgian artists? Are there any great Belgian artists that maybe I haven't heard of? Designing in the style of Belgian lace, right? All those beautiful, that would be a very good pattern-driven idea, because the Belgians are very well known for their fine lace. Anybody who watches Hallmark and has watched the Wedding Veil trilogy, what's wrong with me, right? That veil happened to come from Italy, which I thought was a bit of a travesty, because really all of the great lace comes from Belgium, and I think we all know that. But I can forgive Hallmark pretty much anything, really. Interesting. I like this conversation. Thank you, Cindy. I'd appreciate that. Let's keep this going. If you watch this later, please send me an email at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. This is something I want to share. This is something I want to do together. And for every chapter, I'm going to be making an exclusive pattern that is for the book, right? That you can enlarge and use, you know, at your liberty, however you want to use it. Not commercially, obviously, but for personal use. And in every chapter, I'm probably going to do a few prototypes of other rugs. Like right now, I'm working on an artist called Marie, I think Laurentin, French artist, very bohemian, mistress to, we covered her on bingo night, mistress to Apollinaire, what was his first name? Guillaume Apollinaire, the famous poet. A cubist, female cubist painter, which never happened with Marie. So I'm looking at her stuff right now, and I'm really struggling with a design-like aspect of it. I think I finally cracked it and came up with something that really plays on her beautiful, willowy, fashion-driven, classy, expensive women in the wild sort of fairy tale outdoors, it all in pastel colors in cubist style. So talk about a mashup. I mean, so I've had a lot of misses with the sketches I've been doing, and I anticipate with this book doing a lot of sketches and then saying to myself later, but I'm only going to have time to hook one for the book. It might be that I put the shout out again and I say, does anybody want this pattern to hook it? You know, you have 6 months to hook it, and then I can use the image that you hooked. That's another one in the style of, because I'm only going to put one sort of for free pattern into every section for every artist. So that's going to come around again. So it makes sense to put it out there and say, listen, if there's artists that you like, and they strike me as this is perfect and I'm missing this wrinkle in the art world, then that would be a great one maybe that you could hook once I come up with a design, or maybe you want to design one like. Right? And we'll still use it in the book. But anyway, it's going to be another book that involves a lot of images of ours in our core friend group. I want to always come to you first, to come to us first, to pull from what we do, and then if I need other images or other examples, to go outside to people who we don't know yet, who are future friends. But I always come here first, as you know. Valentina. Oh, okay, so Heidi, is that German? It kann nicht verstehen. Stay. Oh, you can't stay. So, okay, Valentina, so happy to see you, even for a minute. Great to see you. I think I got it. I think she's saying, I can't stay. We are in the middle of the day. That is understandable. I bet you're in Europe and it's even later. I'm very happy you logged on. So let's get going. Thank you so much. I'm going to check in. Oh, Heidi says Magritte. Oh, Magritte is a good one. Remember the apple on the hat, right? That's a good one. James Ensor, Spalert. I don't know those last two. I'm going to have to check those out. Heidi, can you send me a message with those names in them so I can check those out? Thank you. This is what we need to pull from each other's knowledge, right? It's endless, the gift that keeps on giving. Speaking of which, the rugs and quilts of Laura Fisher that went up, if you didn't see yesterday's episode, Laura Fisher, the great and famous folk art textile collector, passed away. She died of a heart attack in September of this past year, 2021. So super sad news for the art community. And just this past weekend, her collection of mostly textiles, quilts, and hooked rugs went up for auction online. And that's what we were talking about on Monday, yesterday, and this is what we'll talk about again tomorrow. I just have to see what Cindy's saying. I will send you a pic of it. Oh, would you? That would be amazing. This could be the most contemporary artist who I cover, right? That would be really fun. So we started looking at the way that the auction performed and the different rugs and quilts that are in that auction that were just sold or passed on. And many of them, I'm telling you, look out on eBay, many of them sold way under and they will be offered online. I have absolutely no doubt that they change hands like this. There's a big turnover and not everybody who was sitting at home during this online auction was buying to invest or to keep. I would guarantee you at least half were buying to resell. So if you fall in love with any of these images you see, be looking out in different places and see, particularly with the multi-lots of 2, 3, or 4 things together. Those are very likely to be bought as a parcel and then divided up and sold individually. And I bet you anything we're going to see a lot of them. Let's come back to Laura Fisher. This is what we left off with yesterday. I just like to do a recap, like remembering where we left. So we looked at these two hooked rugs. I'm looking for the exact slide. And we said, it was quite a good bargain at $5.50 to get 2 geometric hooked rugs, particularly because both of these rugs are very neutral. And if you already have a large collection of hooked rugs going on display, it is very handy to have some neutrals to pop in there because everything can't be color and noise, can it? Sometimes you need things to be a little bit more subdued. And those rugs are good kind of speed bumps, right? Nice neutrals. These are neutral as well, a little bit less so, right? A little bit more colorful. How great would these two pairs go together on a wall? I don't like 4 together. I'd be looking for the 5th or the 7th or the 35th. But these are gorgeous rugs as well. These sold for a little bit less. I think these are a little bit newer. So the top one, kind of that sort of Native American border happening and a lot of great directional hooking right across, horizontal hooking right through the center of the top one. The diamonds are really the prestige in that piece, the sort of black outline, the diamond border, and then a little dot of red in the center of each one. You see the diamonds do change color, even top to bottom. There's some variation. There's some sort of, it seems like there was some running out of color situation happening, which is always exciting for rag rugs. And the bottom one is a great, more modern, very modern looking, right? I mean, this could have been done in 1980, but I have a feeling it's a probably 30s, 40s rug, a classic scrap rug where you don't have a pattern. You just probably start in the middle and make that first square and then a square within a square and a square within that. And then, hey, Teresa, and then, on you go to the squares next to it. And you really get so much of this, speaking of optical art, right? When you outline in a dark color versus a light color, it really plays with your eye and makes you think some squares are larger than others, but they really aren't. This rug was estimated, this rug lot, at 200 to 300, and it sold for 400. It sold over, and I'm not surprised. We talked a little bit about the low estimate, across the board, in my opinion, low estimate on the rugs and quilts in this auction. I'm happy that quite a few of them went over because I think, again, when an appraiser puts that gauge on it, it makes people who are new to buying in an auction format think that that might actually be the value. And we have to constantly remind ourselves at an auction when we are talking about unique handmade items like rugs, like quilts, the thing is worth what the two people with the deepest pockets want it for, right? However badly they want it, it only takes two to tango. And hey, Barbara, and those people are going to drive the bidding up. Now, I have seen rugs that look almost exactly like this at antique centers for $1,400 each. It depends on who is marking the price on the thing. I feel that this auction in general went quite low. So I don't know that these are great benchmarks for us in terms of you're shopping for a rug. I expect to buy a cat's paw for $150. Probably not. Probably not. And particularly with that layer of provenance, knowing that these were rugs that were owned by Laura Fisher meant that she cared about them and thought enough of them to acquire them. So in that regard, I mean, $150 is absurd. This one was estimated at $300 to $500. A hooked rug in cat's paw. Cat's paw, for those of you who don't know, is just the irregular circle with a dit dot in the center. Doesn't even always have the dit dot in the center. It looks like a cat ran through a puddle and then made a little track, right? So this is a little bit different. It has this kind of postage stamp border on it, this wiggly graphic border on the edge. Why did this rug go for less? I'm asking myself a rhetorical question because I don't know the answer. It's a very well done rug. I think it's a newer rug. I think this is a 70s, 80s rug. It could even be a 90s rug. There's very little going on with that sort of hat tip, hey Joy, to the old days, in that when I look at the centers of the cat's paw, there's only a few that are made of patterned wool. And I think with these old time patterns like cat's paw, I think people like to see the patterned wool. They want to feel like it is a rug that was made from thrift and, not from a rug hooking store like Door Mill. So I think that's part of what might have hurt the value on this one because the color variety is fantastic. Overall, color-wise, this is a great rug and it looks like it's new enough to go right down on the floor. But for a collector, you could see how this would be a less interesting rug. It doesn't have any of the sort of old tropes. It doesn't have the mixed wool. It doesn't have any loss. It doesn't have any color variation. Everything is outlined. It's very graphic. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I would love to have this rug for $150. I was asleep at the wheel for most of this, metaphorically, of course. But this rug has everything going for it. I just think from a collector's point of view, there were so many rugs in this auction that were truly old and truly unique and rare with more provenance. Like we saw one yesterday that had also belonged to Barbara Johnson. So I think something like this maybe just came in and was in the midst of so many choices, a little bit too new. I think it would have helped in any case if there was more variety, more mix, the background not being quite so perfect. That's what collectors are looking for. It might not be what you or I would want. I would want this rug just the way it is for myself, but in terms of what collectors are looking for. This one sold for $200, underestimate again, $250 to $350 was the estimate, geometric hooked rug. Beautiful hooked rug with a lot of color consistency. I think that Laura Fisher, just looking at what she owned, went for one of two categories of rug and quilt. It's like either she went for the full blast folk, which was the really old ones, and what prestige are those rugs standing on? Their age, right? Their age and the fact that they were done in the original thrifty way, the rag bag way, where you stick your hand in, you take it out, you hook that color. You run out of colors 5 times in one shape, and you just keep going with the closest color you can find. Certainly that early, very folky category of rug, but then she also seems to choose rugs that have a very distinct traditional quilt look to them, right? So those are two categories of rug that she seemed to have a special eye out for. This is the log cabin again. This is a great crossover rug though, because if you remember us talking about British rag rugs, I did mention with Proddy rugs how in some parts of Britain it is a thing to put a red cross on the rug or a red diamond because it is a superstitious thing that it repels the devil. This could be a hat tip to that. This could be a hat tip to the Red Cross, obviously, or this could just be a design for somebody who had a red coat to cut up. That's one of the great things of earlier rugs. This looks to me like a late 19th, early 20th century rug. I love, again, that sort of, the Amish have kind of hijacked, right, not in a sinister way, the shadows and light pattern of doing these dark diagonals within the log cabin. They have become kind of the masters of that. This has the very heavy central motif in red and a very heavy black border. It's a very graphic design, but there is a lot of fineness happening in that background. There is a lot of optical art. It really is a stunning rug. Oh, Carol says, I like the cat's paw, the scalloped edges, not so much. Yeah, that kind of postage stamp wiggle edge gives it away as a very new rug. We really don't see that on older rugs. That is a new design a la the 1980s, 1990s. And Lynn says, good morning. Good morning, Lynn. Sally, good morning in the Gulf of Mexico. And Lynn is in Tucson. Good morning. All my buddies. Teresa's in Tucson, too. You guys might be neighbors. Wave out the window just in case. So this rug, the geometric hooked rug, sells under, I think you probably have the same thought in your mind. The thing with this rug is it screams Red Cross, right? And if that doesn't have any kind of special association for you, this rug was probably made before the Red Cross was so visible, right? During, I think it's the First World War. But I mean, at this point, you see something that has a motif that's very, very recognizable. Even though it's a standard and traditional old-time graphic motif, it does register a specific brand, if the Red Cross is a brand. So I think that probably didn't help in this case. But in any case, it is a lovely rug with a lot going for it. Another lovely rug. Remember, Carol gave me the great idea yesterday. While I'm on vacation, I'm going to put together a recorded coffee time because internet is a thing. Oh, that's right. I forgot you told me that. You told me that you met up, and I was so happy. I completely forgot. Congratulations to both of you. It's so fun to find a buddy. Remember that line that Jane Austen said, something like, it's so nice when good people find each other, and they always do. I forget what book she said that in, but that's what I thought of when you wrote me the other night and said that you two had met. I'm so happy about that. I'm just spacing out right now. So this is another quilt pattern. This is a variation on a log cabin. It's not truly a log cabin. As you can see, there's a real dominant square in the corner, and they're working sort of half a log cabin out from the northwest of each square. Very pretty, very desert colors, right? Very limited colors. I'm attributing a lot of that to fading, but I do see a lot of red, maroon colors, right? And this is a very warm palette. The only aspect of, the only element of a different type of palette that I'm seeing in here is the neutral palette. I'm seeing a lot of gray khaki represented. Those are neutrals. And I'm not seeing any cool colors at all. So this rug has a specific buyer, right? Because I'm not a fan of warm colors myself, so I'm never looking for them. I'm looking for brights and cools. But for someone who their house is all sort of Santa Fe style, log cabin-y, it's very warm. Not so cottagey, whitewashed, right, like shabby chic, but more warm. This would be a great rug to own, to have, to display, possibly to put down, depending on condition. Estimate $300 to $500. It sold at $425, so just above the sort of median price for this one. That's an okay price. Looks like a large rug, and as I was saying, Carol gave me the great idea while I'm away to be I'm going to put together a show of some of these exact rugs a lot closer up with the close-up photos that appeared in the auction. I saved the auction so I can go back to it. It's hard to get into it once it's closed if you didn't favorite or you weren't bidding, right? It's kind of like a dead link. So I'm going to do that while I'm away, and we can look at a lot of these rugs close up because that'll help us register the size mentally. But also it'll be a real curiosity to see what some of these older ones look like a lot closer up. This one sold for $150. This is basket weave hooked runner. This is a classic hit or miss. This is not on backing. The edges are finished, as you can see on the left. A little bit of loss. It's just done in a color that's very similar to Hessian burlap type color. Absolutely a rag bag job, right? Very easy to do. You don't need any sort of pattern for something like this. See, this estimate really surprises me, $300 to $500, because this is one of the most straightforward. You can call it a basket weave, but it's a straight up hit or miss. Sold for $150, sold way under. So the people who were bidding knew a little bit more. And they realized this isn't, as it's old, it's lovely, it's not in great shape. I don't think it's particularly old. I think it's 20th century. I would say 30s, 40s, maybe 50s. I don't think it's like super old. I have to see it a lot closer up, and that's something we'll do in that video. But, for me, it's a hit or miss rug, and it's lovely, and, it's got a great graphic. It's got a lot going on, but we do see a lot of these rugs. This one doesn't strike me as being very different from ones I've seen many, many times. You see these often in antique centers too, often in better condition too. So this kind of rug, if all we're looking at is lost to the side, because remember this is the era of folding over the burlap and hooking through 2 layers as a finish, so you don't have to finish. But this is the kind of rug a la Judy Taylor. I think I must say her name in every episode, right? I love her. With all her restoration knowledge, she would give you lots of choices on how to finish, either fix or finish a rug like this, or give it a more stable border, right? You could add to it and put a more stable border on it. There'd be lots of choices if that's the only thing going on here. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this rug. Rug $150 I think is the right price for this rug. $300 I don't think is, and $500 not at all. So it's just not unique enough. There's not enough personal touches. There's not enough stories looking at this rug to make it worth as much as some of the rugs that we're seeing that are truly unique. Lots of interesting color changes, color loss, color palettes. You know, this is a straight up hit or miss rug, and it is great. It is great. All of these rugs are great. But that I think is one of the less interesting ones that appeared in this auction. Large striped chevrons hooked rug sold for $750. Right in the estimate there, $600 to $800. So that one was right on. Again, I feel like this one should have been more. With the provenance, I feel like this one should have hit 1,000. I wouldn't have been surprised to see this at 1,200. This is a beautiful old piece. It looks certainly like a 19th century piece. The amount of fading, the amount of colors, we're not seeing any really bright colors. We're not seeing the possibility of people dyeing on bleached white wool that door sells, right? That's what we're working with mostly now. They just didn't have that. If they were dyeing, if they were over dyeing, they were dyeing onto beige or khaki or chino or a winter white. But you know, for that reason, these older rugs, their light starts much darker than our modern white, right? So in that way, it has all of that charm, that warmth. It's got warm browns and reds, and it's got cool blues. It's got a nice mix palette for me. It looks like a nice old rug. It looks like what Pearl McGowan described as the kind of postcard push rug, where you trace a postcard in the corner, you nudge it up in a diagonal, trace all of those corners, and then you keep doing that right up the rug, corner after corner after corner, using nothing but a postcard that someone sent you. And wouldn't it be a beautiful thing then to say to your friend who sent the postcard, look at this rug, I made it from your postcard, right? Wouldn't that be a sweet thing? I bet that happened. I hope that happened many times. So this looks to me like one of these postcard type rugs that people would do by hand to the corner of any kind of document. Me too, Lynn. This is just so mellow. It's so mellow. It's so folky. It's so fine, isn't it? It's very fine. It's got that old-time charm, but it has, color-wise, beauty. The color is very well balanced. They made a real effort to get the darks and lights in good places, right? Because you don't see like a whole bar of just dark, right? They really tried to do an alternating thing where the bar itself, the right angle itself, is lighter. And then they're doing the shadow above it, and under it, the stripies around it, darker. And I think that really makes a big difference because there's so much, it's very distinct looking, right? The shapes in it are very distinct. It's not a pig's breakfast. It's not a big muddle. It doesn't look like there are mistakes. It's really beautifully, naturally, instinctively well done. And that's really what you want with a piece of folk art. You want to see that the person who did it, made it by hand, had that natural built-in color sense, because that is the gift that they gave to the rug that makes it so special and so desirable for a collector. Just like this one, large clamshell triple diamond hooked rug, $475, right? So it sold over the estimate, but I still think that was not enough for this rug. We see a lot of clamshells, but we don't see a lot of patterned clamshells, right? They're calling it diamond. We can call it diamond, but it looks like a snakeskin a little bit. We don't always see a clamshell with a pattern. Normally we see bottom to top when people execute a clamshell, bottom to top, right? Picture that, just filling in the clams, right? Tara's doing a classic clam bottom to top. It is stunning. That's what upholsterers have done since the beginning of time. But this is different. This is using the clamshells as a unit and then making a pattern with all of those units. And you can see that they started not at the bottom, but look closely. They started right in the center, top to bottom, a vertical row of circles. And from the circles out, they did the shells right to left. This is a vertical orientation that we're looking at. That's how they did those diamonds. Isn't that something? And by default, because of the nature of the clamshell, right, because it's a tall kind of loop-de-loop, it is going to morph as you go east and west, right? It's not a square unit, so it is going to change shape as you go away from that center seam. And because of that, when we look at the diamonds, the second sort of evolution out, they look like they're rounding out. That's why it looks like snakeskin. It looks like it's rounding out and down because it's following the natural shape of those clamshells. So this is just simple. Draw it yourself with your Sharpie marker. Just do it. This is just do it time. You start with a row of circles and you just do it, Nike style. I think this is an extraordinary rug. I think it's worth much more than $475. You know, I don't know how many people were bidding. There weren't more than, for example, 10 or 12 bids on any of the rugs, and many of them had one bid. Those were ones that while it was live, I wasn't super interested in, and I was getting outbid on ones I was quite interested in. And it's so hard in the heat of the moment. And if you bid online or you bid at auctions in person, you know, you get emotional, you get panicked, and it's hard to make good decisions in the moment. And then you start second guessing yourself and thinking about your bank account, thinking about other things that you'd like to do and spend money on, and how much really should I spend, and what if that one that's coming up 200 lots later, the one that I really want, what if me bidding another bid on this one makes it impossible for me to bid on that one? It's so hard to make these split-second decisions, and online too. It goes so fast online. Even an auction like this that has hundreds and hundreds of lots, it's hard to make good decisions as you go. So let me come back down to where we were, the way we were. All right, here we are. Here we are. So 4-patch and octagon stars, hooked rug. God, see, this is just making me feel sick. This sold for too little also. Estimate 300 to 500. I'm starting to get upset about these estimates because these estimates, these rugs are falling right within these estimates. These rugs are worth more than this. And I know it's only worth what someone will pay for it. But I feel like if the estimates were a more realistic estimate, like 800 to 1200, right? That's a big window, but let's say 900 to 1200. Then people, I think, would have been bidding a lot closer to 1,000. And I think that's where the rugs that we've been looking at should be found. So this is another geometric, but wow, it's so different. It's so different. Nice balance of color here. Oh, Sally, it was so good, wasn't it? It's like a checkerboard. It reminds me of the linoleum my grandmother used to have in the kitchen, but with the addition of this very graphic flower. And it's in black, right? That's what I love about it. There's a black flower that's a major motif happening in this otherwise red, white, and blue. And it doesn't strike me as particularly patriotic, right? It could read that way. If you had a patriotic vignette going on and you had it on the wall and you had like a little Uncle Sam, right, and a bunch of flags set up. How cool, right? Put a still life in there with some fruit, some summer watermelon, some fun things that remind you of summer in July. It would be absolutely beautiful hanging behind that. It's so different. It's so different. The kind of postage stamp back with the black, red, white, and blue squares, but then those black flowers, they do so much for this rug. The weird fading of some and not others, it seems like light might have hit the bottom, middle of the rug, but the black on the top is very strong unless they changed blacks, right? If they ran out of material and switched. Quilt design. Oh, Teresa, you mean the clamshell? I won't wait because I know there's a huge delay, but I know clamshell is a really important quilt design. I don't think you mean this one, Teresa, but if you do, I've got to know because I don't recognize this as anything. And that's why it strikes me as being a really great rug. You just wouldn't think to do this color palette, would you? I mean, if you were sitting and telling your friend, I'm going to do the background in the red, white, and blue, and I'm going to have these giant, very hard to read, lumpy black flowers, right across the entire composition, your friend would probably say, that doesn't sound super great to me. But again, this is an old rug. These are the colors they had. This is the material they had. They pulled off doing an all-over pattern so beautifully and effectively. It's just different. That's what makes this great. It's just different. That's basically the floor that they have at Friendly's restaurant too, that exact pattern, but without the flower, it's a circle. Clamshell, that's what I thought, Teresa. So pretty as a quilt design too. So, so pretty. I love these quilt crossovers, don't you? It's one of my favorite things when quilting and rug making meet. Hello. I mean, they're immediate neighbors or sisters, or I mean, it's so close. I love the name of this one. I don't know why it's called Marilla's Puzzle, but it is so beautiful. It has that kind of crenellated, very jagged, sawtooth kind of edge. Teresa, this is a lot like a quilt pattern too, isn't it? With the crenellated edges on what otherwise would have been a very straightforward geometric. Marilla's Puzzle hooked rug, estimate 400 to 600, sold for 425. I mean, I think it's worth a little bit more, but I mean, it's a very pretty rug. It's an all-over pattern again. If you notice, they seem to have gone out of their way with putting a slightly darker border around and more of the lighter lights in the center. I think that was smart. It looks good. It's very cohesive. It's same colors throughout. I like the reds, the rusty orange, that kind of straw yellow with the navy, with the various shades of white, possibly black. Very nice color pattern, palette, and pattern. Really beautiful lines. Your eye, like optical art, is catching a lot of diagonals. It's catching a lot of light versus dark. Color placement is a big deal with this kind of composition, and the maker here also did a really noble job of getting great contrast going. I think that's how they were able to. If you look at the far left, that vertical row going down, the border on the far left, those are fairly close to each other from one block to the next color-wise. It looks like there's some patterned wool in there too. Fairly close, but when you get to the center, you can see they're kind of mixing up the colors a little bit, which is interesting. It has your eye traveling around for sure. It is a really beautiful rug. 425 is, I think, okay. A little bit low. Now, I don't get this reference at all. I wonder if you do, and you can help me. Large Missoni Corners Log Cabin Rug. I mean, I know who the designer Missoni is. I wonder if it is a Missoni rug. Is that possible? This sold for $450, so I guess it might be possible. I don't know if Missoni did anything other than fashion, if they do home wear stuff like rugs and textiles. But I mean, I don't know any reference to Missoni other than the 20th century fashion designer. So it makes me wonder whether this is, I mean, I can't imagine Laura Fisher buying a rug from a department store and keeping it in her folk art collection. But I don't know. So this was estimated at between 600 and 800. If this is indeed like a rug, a contemporary rug made by the company Missoni, I would expect it to sell at least for 800 because of the size of this thing. And for people who love brands more than homemade stuff, right? I don't think that's us at all. But there is a huge market for that. And those people, there's a lot more of them than there are us. So this is just a general curiosity for me. This is certainly one that I'll include close-ups of when I do a video that's more detailed on this auction. So $450 seems to me for any rug that's going to probably go down in the living room to be a great bargain. You couldn't do this at Home Goods for $450. But then remember, you have to add on all the fees that are associated with an auction. I'm not even including shipping in my head because maybe you drive and pick it up, but there's a lot of other fees attached to buying. So that would be more like a $650 rug by the time you're done with your fees. Now, this is a colorful chevron hooked rug. This is another beauty, estimated 300 to 500, sold at the high end of the estimate at 475. I think that's an okay price for this. It's another great geometric. You know, some of these geometrics really strike me as old geometrics, right? And when that happens, I feel like they're getting two audiences. They're getting audiences of the people who love to collect folk art. They're getting the people who love to collect what looks like quite old folk art. And in this case, too, you're getting the people who like quilts in this auction. So it's really three different sort of dynamic coming together. You know, it's going to strike you in three different ways if you fall into all three categories. For me, this is one of the rugs that it had more of a newer look. I don't think it's a new rug. I think it's probably early 20th century. I like the color change. Some areas dark, some areas light. I like the sort of natural geometric. I always love a good chevron. I don't have anything against this rug. I think if anything, for me, as a person that's in the first category, I love an old rug where it looks like they were struggling with getting the colors in place in some kind of order. And I don't like too many colors in my folk rugs, right? If I'm collecting a folk rug for myself, I don't like too many colors. I do in newer rugs. This one has a lot of colors, and it's not making me question the age of the rug because I think it is an older rug. It's a bit of an anomaly. I'm just not sure about this. This would be a rug that I'd be more inclined to bid on if I could see it in person and I could really gauge the age of it. Because this could equally be a 1940s rug, which is not a big deal. It's just if you think you're buying an 1880s rug and you actually bought a this is when it sometimes comes in handy. Photos, no matter how close up the photos are, sometimes you just want to see it a little bit closer up because there are a lot of colors in this rug. It could well be, and if so, if this is a very old rug with this much color, $475 is a great price. Chevrons we see less because it is harder. If you're a hooker, you know it is harder to hook on the diagonal and to have it look nice, right? Much easier to go with the grain. So yeah, there is a diagonal grain in your backing, particularly in burlap. It's easy to see, but they were working on burlap, and burlap is quite irregular. You do have one strand that's really wide open and creates one big lane, and then next to it there's a bunch of smaller lanes. It's hard to get things exactly even. So diagonals are that much more challenging, which makes a chevron nice. I want to catch up on the comments. Lynn says, I looked up the Missoni corners, and it seems to me that this is one of Missoni's patterns. Okay, so the designer Missoni. Okay. Thank you for corroborating that. I mean, I don't know. I'll have to check the auction again, but it seems like it makes sense, doesn't it, Lynn? I mean, nothing else really makes sense because it was Missoni with a capital M, too. Karen says, looks like dark part was under a sofa. Oh, it could have been. Saved the top part. Yep, and then the light hits the other parts. The rest of it got sun bleached. We might be talking about the last one. Let me check back there. As soon as I come back to you with my face, which maybe I should just stop doing, it goes back to the beginning of the slideshow. Wouldn't you think technology would be a little bit better than that at this point? But alas, hold on one second. Let's see where we are. I'm using my horrible eyes to try to figure out which little icon doesn't have a cross through it. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. We're enjoying this rug immensely. I know. I'm going to have to put on my number 5 glasses. I'm telling you, it's really, there we go. Let me come back here. No, I think we are talking. So that we believe to be a Missoni rug. And we're talking about this one. It does have a dark spot that does look like a giant rectangle. Looks like a giant rectangle and almost like there was a coffee table to the northeast of it, right at the bottom right-hand corner. Isn't that funny? Absolutely could be. It is a stunning rug. We'll look at this one closer up. It is just very, very, very colorful and unexpected to me because of that. Now, her auction, her estate, Laura Fisher's estate, also included a lot of Navajo rugs. And we just covered Navajo rugs on Coffee Time, so I thought it was interesting to see some that were especially good. Now, this is especially good. I don't know how the estimate $250 to $450 could get on a rug like this. Sold for $650. That's more like it. It should have gone higher. We looked at Navajo rugs, so I'm not going to get into it again, but this is a very different Navajo rug. This rug has the Navajo color palette that we expect to see, but that central motif is very filigree. Doesn't that strike you if you've seen what a Pen Dutch fracture looks like? Look at those lines that look like they're almost done in calligraphy, like some of them fine and then broad, like you drag your calligraphy pen down, it makes a broader line. That is some very whimsical, fine work in the center. That's very different, right? We didn't see that in our study of Navajo rugs. That strikes me as being very special. I would have expected this one to go a little bit higher. I mean, my focus is completely drawn to that central motif because it's unexpected. Sally, you just Googled Missoni rugs and you saw that one went cheap. Yeah, for that size, for any rug that's a large rug for a living room, $400 and anything. I mean, it's a lot of money, but for a rug, that's cheap. It is really cheap. Good. Well, we have gotten together. This is what we're so good for, right? Getting our heads together and figuring that out. I'm glad that is. I'm sorry that was in the auction though, because it's a machine-made rug. I mean, it's not the same thing, is that? It has value, yes. But it doesn't, for me, it doesn't belong with all of these older rugs that have this wonderful, rich, handmade histories. So this Navajo rug went for $650 above the asking price. I think that is very good because we know Navajo rugs are more like welcome mat style. They're not enormous. Another beautiful Navajo rug. I clipped this one wrong, didn't I? Yeah. I just don't like fooling with photos. Well, no, I'm not going to do it. Nope, not going to do it. Doesn't work when we're live. So I don't have the estimate on this. I'm assuming it's the same, something like 300 to 500 or something. This one sold for a little less at 600. This is a more sort of traditional Navajo design, unlike the one that we just looked at with that filigree center, inexplicably different. And I don't know the basis at all for that design. Just very, very special. Also special, this one, right? Also special, very traditional, more along the lines of what you would expect to see and what you would expect to find. My thing jumped again. Here, let me come back down. And I think we might have one more. Navajo, here we go. Yep, another Navajo rug, sold for $375. Estimate was $250 to $450. Another real beauty. I believe this is the, remembering back to our days talking about Navajo rugs, I think it was the Two Gray Hills, this motif, made by Two Gray Hills. That's what it reminds me of anyway. Beautiful black border on this, right? The direction changes on the border. I think that's very, very cool. It's a beautiful rug for $375. These Navajo rugs are available on eBay. We talked about that when we covered this subject. They go anywhere between maybe just under 200 to close to 1,000. So these prices are still a little bit, I think, on the low side for Navajo rugs. Again, particularly when they have provenance. So this one is really different. I'm going to show you this one closer up in a recorded video. Kate Greenaway Black Figures. So these are applique patches, right? Applique patches. This is a quilt. And I cannot explain why this went for as little as it went for. Estimate 600 to 800. I think in general, the person who did the estimates for this auction placed the quilts higher because Laura Fisher was better known for her quilts than her hooked rugs. At the end of the day, she was collecting all kinds of textiles for decades. So all important. But this Kate Greenaway, it's Kate Greenaway inspired, right? These are some of the characters that Kate Greenaway did, the sort of predecessor to the Sunbonnet Sioux, some organic forms like flowers and plants, maybe a spider's web in there. I will show you this one closer up. I think this is, though this is certainly a 20th century rug, I would put this at, I would say 1930s, 1940s. Could even be 1950s, pretty plaid border. I love this rug. It looks, it doesn't look super old. I think it's definitely worth more than $325. This is an applique quilt rug. It could be, I'm going to come away again for a minute and let me note that we are on number 28. I do want to point out, and I've mentioned this before in coffee time, when we talk about old quilts, or maybe I mentioned it in the Designing Like the Great American Quilt class, when we talk about quilts, there were so many instances starting from Great Depression years, right? Starting from like the, well, 1929 is the Depression, so starting from the early 30s, when we start seeing so many Sunbonnet Sioux and we start seeing so many repeat patterns in quilts, applique patterns or actual quilting patterns. Many of these patterns are coming from magazines and newspapers. People are giving out free patterns constantly because of the times, because of the Depression, because of those years of hardship. Trying to throw people a bone, giving you something, you know, just like the idea behind the feed sacks, giving you materials, giving you a design to work from for free, just to try to cheer life a little bit, make things that much better. So I think a lot of the designs that are on this particular Kate Greenaway are designs that were probably taken from magazines, where here and there they thought, oh, I'll take a cornucopia, I'll take the Sunbonnet Sioux character, let me take a rose, because they're not super cohesive. The birds and stuff, right? It doesn't straight off the bat remind me of Kate Greenaway's work, which makes me think, because Kate Greenaway did a lot of things with girls with bonnets on a little bit earlier, right? Like she's late 19th century, early 20th century. And she didn't do a lot of close-ups of flowers, right? So I don't know. It's feeling to me more like somebody had collected a bunch of designs from the periodicals that were at hand and over time composed a quilt made from their favorite designs or the designs that they could get for free. That's what this strikes me as, which would place this quilt at a 30s, 40s era quilt. And I think, why not? I still think it's worth more than $325. It's a really special thing. So here's another one that's super bright and pretty. This is, for whatever reason, this isn't one of my favorites. This is estimate 300 hooked rug to 500 sold for 200. Again, they put a higher estimate on this one, and I just don't understand why. Um, so this could be like in quilters language, the flying geese pattern, right? It's a very geometric triangle driven pattern. This strikes me as a newer rug. This strikes me as an early 20th century rug, 20s, 30s. By newer, I mean it's not an 1860s rug. There's a lot going on here which make me wonder whether it's an even later rug, more like a 50s, 60s rug. And that is the swirling, right? I can't say marble cake because marble cake is meant to be like one color base, like a marble cake, right? That swirls into itself, and you're not really supposed to notice the swirls because you ran out of material. This is not that. This is really pointedly choosing very different colors to swirl it up. So is it impossible that this is an older rug? No, it's very possible it's an older rug. And if it is, then it's super valuable because people really did not do this. There wasn't that feeling in the late 19th, early 20th century that swirling it up Kaffe Fassett style was a good idea. It was more like you didn't want people to notice that you ran out of red, so you certainly weren't going to mix it with white, right? Maybe you mix it with pink or orange, but you weren't going to mix it with white. This rug is doing just that. So, I have a lot of questions about this rug. I will look at it more closely when we come back to the auction, but it's an interesting rug for me in that way. It has some of the kind of tropes of earlier rugs, the heavy black outline, right? Really graphic black outline and that very neutral border. I was going to say boring, but I don't mean boarding. I mean somebody had a coat of that color and they had the most of that, so they're going to use that for the border. And when they know that they've had enough for the border, they're going to plug it into the places where they run out in the center. But this is a very ostentatious use of many bright colors with no attempt to match and blend. So for me, that doesn't feel like a super old rug. It does create a beautiful, contemporary looking, colorful rug, a very cheerful rug. For people who love graphics, for people who like plays on quilt designs, this is a gorgeous rug. But I don't think it's a particularly valuable rug. And I think the buyers thought the same because it only went for 200. Half square triangles. So pretty, Lynn, right? So pretty, so simple, so easy to do for rug hookers too. Got a lot of diagonals here, but you can fill however you like, right? Really pretty, really bright. Just it didn't strike me, but of course all of these strike us differently. Another Navajo rugs by Two Gray Hills. Remember, Two Gray Hills didn't always have the two references to the hill in every design because it was also its own company. So we know that this is a Two Gray Hills. They haven't been naming on other rugs the company that made them, and that surprises me because it's very easy to look up what the motifs are and to be able to attach it to a specific Navajo brand, right? This is what we did for a week on Coffee Time. Very pretty interlocking border design, kind of a play on a key. Central design, the kind of two shaped out blocky blocks, very typical. The kind of arrows coming out from the top and bottom, right? There's a lot of motifs that we talked at during that time. Nice color palette here. We got a really neutral color palette. We're not going for those deep indigos and reds. This is very solidly set in neutrals, grays, white, black. That's it. Estimate 200 to 400 and sold for 800. So people who were bidding on this realized this is a more valuable rug. It is a more traditional pattern, but the palette is unusual. It's a very limited palette. So sometimes these were custom rugs and things when they did a very limited palette. You can see that even the grays are quite different from each other. It makes it interesting, makes it more valuable. So the people bidding on this snapped it up, realizing that this is one of the more special of the Navajo rugs. We'll do a couple more. Okay, so here's another quilt. And let's do a couple more slides and then I'll stop and I'll finish that Amish toothbrush video for later. This is an African American. We are going to do a whole segment on African American quilts, right? We're going to talk about Gee's Bend. We're going to talk about all of the great names in quilting and African American quilting. So this is certainly the look of the best of the African American quilt. I'm going to stop harping on the estimates. The estimate for this was 600 to 800. It went for 6,000, right? The estimates are just very, very low. It's super irritating, but they are. So I mean, I would think most people who understand textiles would know that an African American quilt, if Laura Fisher was calling it an African American quilt, it was worth quite a bit. So luckily, it went for what it was worth, about 6,000. With Sally says it might be because people recognize Two Gray Hills from Navajo culture videos. True, absolutely, that's true, Sally. That's a good point. Because they were one of the two really big names. I remember from those episodes, they were two really big names. For those of you who are quilters, way off, Lisa, that really shouldn't happen. I mean, it's always nice when things sell over, but that estimate, I'm stopping, but it's a guide. It's a guide. It should be pretty close to what the thing is worth. So for quilters, this pattern tipped the other way around, right? It's top to bottom right now, but it often goes the other way, horizontal. And this pattern is often referred to for quilters as Roman coins, like it's stacked coins. Absolutely beautiful. Color palettes just don't get better than this. It's so earthy, reaching toward those medium muddy colors in the middle. Those are my favorites. Dark, light, dull, bright. Look for all of them. You see the dark, you see the light, you see lots of dulls, you see that bright turquoise, the bright coral. This is just perfection. The sort of incongruity, the sizing, look from row to row. It's almost like a messy bookshelf, isn't it? When you're looking at it this way. I would be hanging it the other way like Roman coins because to me that's more traditional. But this is absolutely beautiful the way that it would be on the bed. I like how each sort of slat of color is irregular. Even going down, they aren't parallel and perfect. Absolutely beautiful. You can tell that it's a handmade quilt because these are not straight lines. With the long shots, they get a bit wobbly, don't they? It is absolutely a gorgeous quilt, and I think a bargain at 6,000. And here's another one. We'll end on this one today. A really beautiful African American strip bars pieced quilt. This one sold for a lot less. It is still beautiful. It still falls into that category of Roman coins, right? Stacking up like this. This has a more limited color palette. It's not quite as dynamic and it looks a lot smaller. I think the way that the photo is taken, it looks like not squared, but I think it probably isn't squared. These were not always perfect at all. So this one went for a lot less, 200 to 300, sold at the top at 300. I think it's worth a lot more than 300, but I don't think it's worth 6,000. I think the one before, and let's look at that one more time, in comparison was absolutely, they're both beautiful. They're both so beautiful, but this is the one, isn't it? If you have that money and you're gonna buy one of the African American strip bars pieces, then this is obviously the one that you want. I mean, this is the one that I would want anyway. The color is just, this is like, you know, The Wizard of Oz when it starts to do Technicolor, and the other one was right before. Still great, but this is the moment where everything turns and your heart stops, you know, because you're so elated. It's just an extraordinary piece. And we have about 20 to 30 more slides to look at tomorrow, so that is certainly what we're going to do tomorrow. I will be back with you tomorrow for Wednesday. I'm getting orders out. I'm getting things done. Getting scared. I'm going to do a bit of dyeing tonight because I want to get all of those cats done. I brought it to the house because I'm referring to it for dyes. 1985 cat is selling as a pattern on its own, as a kit and as a class, and sold in all those ways. So I'm putting that together now before I go away for the people who bought the class, so you can have it and rest assured that it's at your house. Because I'm going to be away for 2.5 weeks. So I'm getting the orders out right now, and I'm getting some video shot that I'll put out later for you. I posted a video. I timed it. It didn't post at the right time. It's so irritating. But I timed it for noon today, and it came out in the middle of the night last night. So that video was on. I'll just tell you really quickly in case you want to watch it. I think it's a really important video. Thanks, Kirsten. Thumbs up, please, for our channel and subscribe. It was a video on hooking with challis. Do you remember challis? Because, I mean, I'm a girl of the 80s, and having challis shawls, this material, you sometimes get challis wool, like Liz Claiborne did a lot of challis wool. Challis is like a loose weave, right? And it was originally either all wool to make things in challis, very sort of lightweight gossamer because of the open weave nature of challis. And then challis became available in like synthetic and wool blends or like silk and wool blends. And now it's like, it's not a popular fabric anymore. It's not a durable fabric, but it is woven in a very similar way to paisley. And it looks like paisley. And I have been secretly hooking with challis like crazy lately just to be sure that it's fantastic, and it is so fantastic. So I finally put a video together. One of the bed rugs I'm hooking uses challis in the background, and another piece that I'm working on, my Chagall, has a challis scarf in the background. Because when we're talking about the cost of paisley, buying an antique paisley scarf versus, which is much larger, like piano scarf or shawl size, right? Massive. We're talking about $480 for a paisley, right? Realistically, you rarely find them for bargains because people know that they're valuable. Versus a challis scarf, which is often like, I don't know, 24 inches squared, like to wrap around and do stuff with. Some are larger than others, for under $10, you know. And if you're only using it for like a part of your composition, 10 is a lot better than 480, you know. So, and you can find these online. So I've been hooking a lot with challis scarves, and I did a video on it so that if you're interested in it, you could look too. It also gives you, if you hook with challis, it looks the same as hooking with paisley. Your loops look the same. It performs the same. Cut it with scissors, hook with it. It has got that elusive quality, unique, magical mystique to it that you can, I thought you could only get with paisley, but you can get it with challis too, because it's the same weight and it hooks the same. And the other thing that you can get with paisley, besides a better price, is crazy colors, right? Because challis scarves are very popular in the 1980s, and you've got turquoise and lime green and key lime and fuchsia and crazy colors. So you can go for the traditional paisley scarves that you find in skirts, in clothing that are done in challis, or you can get the ones that Liz Claiborne did that are often crazy colors. And, you know, still has the same feel as paisley. And the feel is really what you want, particularly if you don't have the funds to buy everything that you like and look at. So I thought, for me, that was a great breakthrough because it opened up my material options a lot. When I know that I like to hook with paisley, and it's always a thing about money and finding it. And I thought, man, now, like, I'm just, every time I go into a thrift store, I find 5 paisley scarves, and at a thrift store, they're going to be more like $1 or 50 cents, right? So something to think about. Challis hooks a lot different than, like, for example, a silk shawl. It looks rougher, like wool, right? If it's 100% wool, or if it's 100% acrylic, it still hooks just like paisley. But as soon as you buy one that says challis shawl, buy one, get it home, touch it, look at it, and then you know what it looks like. So if you go to the thrift store and the tag is cut off, a skirt or a shawl, you go, well, I can see that that's challis because now I exactly know what challis looks like and feels like. Keep it in your bag, right? Just so you know when you're out in the world and you're looking for more, you're like, this is challis. This is not something else. And knowing that it is going to cut well, it's going to hook well, and it's going to be beautiful. So I put that video out by accident in the middle of the night last night. Hey, I will see you tomorrow for another Coffee Time episode. I will be on at our regular time, noon Eastern Standard Time, and we will finish looking at the slideshow of the quilts and rugs from the Laura Fisher auction. And then I will update you on vacation stuff and what I'm up to, and the other videos that will be coming out soon. I'm chasing my tail right now, but if you need me or you have great ideas about the Design Like series, please write to me at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. Anytime. I'll be constantly checking my mail.